A forklift pushed the first wooden crate over the edge of Westfield Furniture Works' loading bay. Then it dropped another and another, until 600 damaged boxes filled the concrete yard. 3 waste companies had refused to take them cheaply, so plant manager Grant Holloway offered Miriam Stoltzfus $900 to remove everything. Shipping supervisor Carl Reese kicked a broken panel. "Once these leave, we do not want them back." Miriam turned one crate upside down and examined the runners. Before spring, Carl would return asking for those crates. But first, Miriam's best-looking box would fail under weight. Miriam was 47, an old-order Amish widow, and the mother of 3 grown children. She ran a small wood shop outside Lidditz, Pennsylvania. Her father had repaired orchard boxes and taught her to inspect the parts that carried the load. "A box tells the truth at the bottom," he used to say. One Westfield crate smelled of oil, so Miriam rejected it. Another had a crushed corner but a clean poplar panel. A gray third box had thick hardwood runners beneath its scars. The runners on the screen are the long pieces that kept the load above the floor. Factory workers saw scraped wood. Miriam saw the part that had done the hardest work. She accepted the entire pile only after Westfield separated known contamination and stopped crushing the boxes. For 9 days, borrowed trucks carried the load to her farm. Her daughter Leah numbered each group. Her sons Samuel and Joseph separated panels, runners, questionable wood and metal. Neighbor Ross Weaver stared at the crowded shed. "They paid you because it is kindling," he said. "They paid me because they needed the space," Miriam answered. Then she placed crate number 48 on her workbench. Crate 48 looked better than most. It was 36 inches long, made from clean pine, and still square when Miriam placed it on the workbench. The runners touched the floor evenly. The side panels showed only gray nail shadows. There was no odor and no dark stain. Miriam removed the protruding staples. She sanded the edges, added 2 cleats, fitted a lid, and placed a simple cushion on top. In less than 2 days, an old shipping box had become a mudroom bench with storage for boots. Leah liked it. Ross admitted it looked good. Evelyn Price, who owned a farm store outside town, offered to place it near her front door for the Christmas season. Miriam told Evelyn to come Friday afternoon. 1 hour before Evelyn arrived, Miriam began a weight test. She placed feed sacks on the seat. 100 pounds held, 140 held. At 160, the left corner made a dry, clicking sound. Miriam removed the sacks. The bench still looked square. She pressed the lid. Nothing moved. She could have driven one more screw through the side and covered the joint with trim. Instead, she opened the corner. A narrow split ran from an old staple hole into the lower runner. 3 short pieces of rusted steel remained hidden inside the pine. The surface had stayed closed while the crate was empty. Under weight, the old hole acted like the beginning of a tear. Evelyn entered the workshop while the bench lay in pieces. "Is that the one I came to buy?" she asked. Miriam held up the split runner. "It was. Can you repair it before tomorrow?" Miriam could repair the corner, but she could not yet prove that another corner would not open. "I can build you another after I understand this one," she said. Evelyn left without the bench. By Monday, the story had reached Westfield. Carl sent a message through Samuel. "Tell your mother the factory still does not want its crates back." Miriam hung the split runner above her workbench. Her first product had failed before making one sale, and the failure showed her that she had been asking the wrong question. Miriam had asked whether the crate was still strong. Now she asked whether each piece could be understood. The next morning, Leah drew a red line through the words "intact crate" in the ledger. Beneath it, she wrote 4 questions. Were the panels sound? Were the runners sound? Could every old fastener be found and removed? Could useful boards be rebuilt without depending on the original corners? Miriam and her children dismantled 10 crates from different parts of the load. They supported each panel before lifting staples. A small handheld detector found broken steel below the surface. Any dark mark with an unknown odor stayed out of the indoor inventory. Crushed fibers, rot, and deep splits were cut away or rejected. After the first 60 crates, they had no mountain of free lumber. They had 23 groups of sound boards, 16 groups with enough matching material for panels, 12 sets of damaged runners, and 9 crates Miriam would not use inside a home. Look at the 2 stacks on the screen. The tall pile is counted by boxes. The smaller stacks are counted by what each board can safely do. That was the change that saved the project. Miriam stopped trying to preserve the old crate shape. She built a new frame. 4 hardwood corner blocks carried the weight. New rails connected them. Reclaimed pine panels closed the sides, but they did not support the person sitting above. Replaceable feet kept the broad panels away from wet floors. New screws entered fresh wood instead of old staple holes. She explained the idea to Joseph using a kitchen cupboard. "The door hides the dishes," she said. "The cabinet frame holds them off the floor. Do not ask the door to become the wall." The second bench used boards from 5 different crates. At 160 pounds, the frame remained square. At 200, nothing moved. At 240, a side panel made a small sound. Miriam stopped. This time the panel had not split. One screw head touched the edge of a narrow movement slot. She widened the slot, rebuilt the connection, and tested the bench again. It held. Evelyn returned the following Saturday. Miriam did not hide the new frame. She turned the bench over and showed her the corner blocks, the clean fastening areas, and the replaceable feet. "Is this still one of Westfield's crates?" Evelyn asked. "Parts of 5 crates," Miriam said. "The box failed." The boards did not all fail with it. Evelyn sat down, opened the lid, and placed her boots inside. Then she paid Miriam $185 and carried the bench to her store. That first sale did more than recover the cost of hardware. It proved that Miriam's answer was not saving a crate. It was giving verified pieces a new job. If you enjoy watching discarded materials face a real test instead of becoming an easy miracle, subscribe to the channel. Miriam had solved one weak corner, but her next order would expose a problem that no hammer, screw, or corner block could stop. The bench stood beside Evelyn's front door through the first 2 weeks of December. Customers sat on it to change wet boots. Children opened the lid. Salt, snow, and small stones collected around the replaceable feet. The frame stayed square. 3 customers asked where it came from. One ordered a bench for a farmhouse entry. Another wanted 4 pantry bins. A third asked for an outdoor garden chest, but Miriam refused to promise outdoor life from thin pine panels made for protected shipping. She offered a covered porch box with replaceable feet instead. The refusals slowed sales, but they made the accepted uses more believable. Miriam would not build cribs, ladders, cutting boards, children's climbing frames, or structural house parts from wood with an incomplete history. Unknown boards did not become safe because they looked rustic. Leah recorded the labor behind every finished object. Each useful board had to be identified, opened, checked for steel, cut around damage, cleaned, conditioned, and matched with other pieces. New glue, screws, hinges, rails, and finish still cost money. The factory had paid $900 to make a pile disappear. Miriam's customers were paying for everything that happened after the pile arrived. On December 18th, Evelyn came back with a larger request. Her farm store sold garden seed in early spring. She wanted 18 stackable wooden bins along one wall. The bins needed sloping fronts so customers could see the packets. The bottom 6 needed lids because Evelyn planned to store extra inventory inside them at night. "Can the old crate boards do that?" Evelyn asked. Miriam did not answer by looking at the boards. She looked at the store wall, measured the floor, checked the furnace vent, and asked how high Evelyn planned to stack the units. The store was warmer and drier than Miriam's unheated storage shed. Customers would lean against the bins. Workers would move them before and after the seed season. 18 matching units also required far more repeatability than one bench. Miriam agreed to build 3 test bins first. She selected broad pine panels that had come from the covered side of Westfield's loading bay. The boards appeared dry. Her comparative moisture reading was lower than it had been when the load arrived. The panels remained flat on the bench. She built a stable lower frame, used hardwood blocks at the corners, and allowed the front panel to sit inside shallow rails. The 3 bins stacked cleanly in the workshop. Evelyn approved them and asked Miriam to leave the test set inside the store while she prepared the remaining 15. For 5 days, nothing happened. On the 6th day, The lowest lid began rubbing against its front corner. On the 8th, a narrow gap appeared between two boards in the upper bin. On the 10th morning, Evelyn lifted the stack to sweep beneath it. One broad side panel had cupped. The three units no longer sat flat against one another. When she pushed the top bin, the stack rocked. She sent a driver to Miriam's farm. "Evelyn says the seed wall is moving," he said. Miriam reached the store before noon. No joint had broken. No bin had collapsed. The corner blocks remained firm. The new frame had solved the weakness that destroyed the first bench, but the broad pine panels had changed shape. Miriam placed a straight edge across one side. Light showed beneath the center. She measured the gap between two boards and compared it with the line in Leah's ledger. The wood had narrowed inside the warm store. At Westfield, those crate panels had spent months near an open loading bay. At Miriam's farm, they had rested under a roof during cold, damp weather. Then she moved them into a heated shop and began cutting after only 6 days. The surface felt dry. The board had not finished adjusting. Watch the broad panel on the screen. As it released moisture into the dry room, it did not become shorter from end to end in a way anyone could easily see. It changed mostly across its width. One side moved faster than the other, and the panel curved. The frame held its shape. The panel fought against it. Miriam had measured the wood once and treated that number as permission. That was her second mistake. Evelyn crossed her arms. "I need 18 by the middle of January." "You do not need 18 like these," Miriam said. She took all 3 bins back. Ross saw them in the wagon and followed Miriam into the workshop. "The corner blocks failed?" he asked. "No." "The old screw holes?" "No." Miriam set the cupped panel on the table. "I built before the wood stopped moving." Ross pressed one end and watched the other rise. "Then those wide boards are finished." "For this job, perhaps. Not for every job." Miriam and Leah started a second record beside the inspection ledger. Boards moved into the heated shop on a known day. They rested on narrow spacers so air reached both faces. Leah recorded their weight and comparative readings. Miriam did not begin final joinery until the change became small and steady. She also stopped asking one wide board to behave like a sheet of factory-made panel material. The new bin sides used narrower boards held inside a stable frame. Small gaps were planned and covered from behind. Lids rested on frames that stayed square even when the boards moved slightly. Fasteners held the panels without trapping every edge. The first corrected bin waited in Miriam's kitchen for 4 days, then in Evelyn's store for 10. The furnace blew warm air across it every morning. The lid opened without rubbing. The sides stayed flat. The stack did not rock. Only then did Miriam begin the other 17. 18 matching bins required a new kind of work. One bench could be adjusted until it looked right. 18 units had to fit one another. A mistake repeated 18 times would not remain a small mistake. Samuel built a waist-high cradle to hold irregular panels, while Miriam removed old fasteners. Joseph made simple wooden templates for the corner blocks, rails, and sloping fronts. Leah grouped conditioned boards by width and movement, not merely by color. Miriam kept the most important decisions for herself. She approved each cut near an old fastener line. She rejected any piece with a smell or mark they could not explain. She checked that every structural screw entered fresh, sound wood. The work became faster, but it did not become careless. On January 14th, Miriam and Samuel delivered the final bins to Evelyn's store. 6 units formed the lower row, 6 more locked into place above them. The last 6 completed the wall. Evelyn filled the sloping fronts with bright seed packets. Extra stock went behind the lower lids. Customers could remove one bin for cleaning without taking the entire wall apart. For the next 2 weeks, Miriam visited twice. She checked the lids, the stack, the feet, and the broadest panels. Nothing moved beyond the space the design allowed. Evelyn paid $630 for the complete order. More important, the seed wall gave Miriam a repeatable system. The system had 4 rules. Old shapes were dismantled before new work began. Structural loads belonged to verified frames. Reclaimed panels needed time to adjust to the room where they would be used. And every replaceable part had to be reachable after assembly. Those rules spread through the shop faster than the story of free wood. By February, Miriam had built 14 benches, 26 pantry and display bins, 9 canning racks, and 11 covered porch boxes. Some pieces used 5 crates. Others used only 2 soundboards from a box whose remaining parts were rejected. The 600 crates were no longer 600 products. They were thousands of decisions. Then the new finishing line at Westfield Furniture Works began running. Grant Holloway showed visitors the empty bays and explained that paying Miriam $900 had saved the factory almost $4,000 compared with the disposal estimate. Carl told the story with even more confidence. "Best waste contract we made all year," he said. One February afternoon, Grant stopped at Evelyn's store for a set of work gloves. The seed wall stood directly across from the entrance. He noticed a faded pressure mark on the side of one bin. It was no longer readable, but he remembered where Westfield's receiving labels had once been stapled. Grant pulled the bin away from the wall and turned it over. 4 hardwood blocks held a separate frame. The panels sat inside rails. The feet could be replaced. A small number beneath the lower edge connected the piece to Miriam's ledger. "Where did this come from?" he asked. Evelyn pointed toward Miriam's farm. Grant stared at the wood Westfield had paid to remove. For the first time, he did not see an old crate. He saw a system his own factory did not have. 3 weeks later, that missing system became an emergency. Westfield had won its largest order of the year from the Bellwether Hotel Group. The contract included 72 dining tables, 144 upholstered chairs, and 18 carved reception pieces for 3 historic hotels in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. Production was ahead of schedule. Packaging was not. The factory normally shipped standard furniture in heavy corrugated cartons with shaped protective inserts. The hotel pieces were different. Their curved table edges, carved aprons, and finished surfaces could not rub against one another during transport. Westfield ordered custom reusable carriers from its regular supplier. In early March, a water pipe broke above the supplier's assembly area. Lumber, templates, and finished packaging parts were damaged. The 6-week delivery moved beyond Westfield's first hotel deadline. Grant called 2 other companies. One could deliver in 8 weeks. The other offered rush work at a price that would erase much of Westfield's profit. Carl ordered the shipping crew to build a box from pallet lumber and factory offcuts. The test box looked heavy enough. Then a forklift lifted the wooden mock table inside it. One lower runner twisted. The rectangular frame leaned, and the table base moved almost 2 inches against the side. No finished table was damaged because Grant had ordered a controlled test, but the result stopped the shipping room. Westfield had plenty of wood. It did not have a tested way to turn different pieces into repeatable carriers. Grant remembered the seed bins. The next morning, he and Carl reached Miriam's farm at 7:10. 3 empty factory trucks waited at the end of her gravel lane. Grant placed furniture drawings on her work table. "We need 180 carriers in 12 days, he said. Miriam studied the table weight, chair dimensions, forklift openings, strap points, and delivery routes. Then she said no. Carl looked toward the sorted stacks. "We paid you to take 600 crates." "You paid for removal," Miriam said. "Some boards became products. Some were rejected. Some are still changing. And none of those piles is 180 tested carriers." Grant asked what she could do. Miriam counted the verified hardwood blocks, stable panels, and clear fastening areas. She had enough suitable reclaimed material to help build about 60 carriers without lowering her rules. Westfield would have to provide new structural runners, cushioning, straps, and 4 workers. The factory would also need to ship the furniture in waves and bring reusable carriers back from each hotel. 60 carriers cannot move more than 200 pieces, Carl said. Miriam placed 3 delivery schedules side by side. "They can if they come home." Grant gave her 1 day to prove it. The first carrier was built around a wooden mock-up with the exact size and weight distribution of 1 hotel table. Miriam used reclaimed pine panels along the sides because their job was to protect the finish from contact. Verified hardwood blocks reinforced the corners. New runners went beneath the frame because Westfield needed identical forklift spacing on every unit. Carl watched the new boards go underneath. "I thought we came for our crates." "You came for a carrier that works," Miriam said. By late afternoon, the mock table was strapped inside. The forklift raised the frame, carried it across the plant, and turned sharply toward the loading bay. The outer frame remained square. The table did not. Its heavy base shifted toward the left wall, one padded block compressed, and the tabletop moved close enough to the panel to leave a pale pressure mark. Grant wanted more screws through the side. Miriam stopped him. The side had not moved. The load had moved inside it. Westfield's shipping engineer changed the contact blocks so they met the table at stronger points. He crossed the strap path instead of pulling both straps in the same direction. Miriam added an inspection opening so workers could confirm tension without dismantling the carrier. They repeated the turn. The table remained centered. They performed a controlled stop. It stayed centered again. Then the forklift carried the frame over the rough concrete near the loading dock. The carrier vibrated, but the corners held. During the final lift, a sharp crack came from below. One lower runner had split near a bolt. Carl pointed at the broken wood. "There it is, old material." Miriam lowered herself beside the frame and wiped away the dust. The runner was new. Its grain curved out toward the edge exactly where the bolt pulled upward. The board had looked clean because it had no nail holes or weather marks. It had still been wrong for that position. New wood had passed Carl's eyes and failed the test. Reclaimed wood had carried the side load and remained in place. Miriam did not celebrate the comparison. A failed new runner could damage furniture as easily as a failed old one. She changed the specification. Every runner needed straighter grain through the lifting zone. The bolt moved farther from the weak edge. A broad washer plate spread the force. The replacement runner received a test before it entered the frame. On the third full route, the carrier stayed square. The table remained centered, and the runners returned without a crack. Grant approved production. Then Leah opened the inventory ledger and found the next problem. They could build 60 carriers, but not 60 identical carriers from the material Miriam still possessed. Some reclaimed panels were long enough for tables. Others fit only paired chair carriers. The hardwood blocks varied in size. Several stacks still contained broken steel near the best-looking cutting lines. If workers chose boards by appearance, production would stop at the saw or repeat the first bench failure 60 times. Miriam divided the order into 3 families. Table carriers used the longest verified panels and 4 standard corner blocks. Paired chair carriers used shorter panels around a new frame with separate padded spaces. The carved reception pieces received mostly new structural wood, with reclaimed panels used only where dimensions and condition allowed. Joseph made full-size templates for every reclaimed component. A red zone marked any area where an old fastener line could not enter the new joint. Leah connected each group to the ledger. Samuel set up 3 work areas, so metal removal, cutting, and assembly did not happen on the same crowded bench. Westfield sent 4 workers. On the first morning, they tried to increase speed by carrying a whole stack directly to the saw. Miriam stopped the line. One board contained a broken staple leg beneath the surface. She passed the detector over it, and the small signal changed beside the old hole. "A fast line that damages a blade is not a fast line," she said. The workers returned to the inspection station. By the 4th day, production found a steady rhythm. One team opened and checked material. One cut verified pieces against templates. One assembled new frames. Miriam inspected structural joints and approved any reclaimed part used near a fastening point. The process did not make every old board usable. It made rejection faster. Cracked ends went into a marked bin. Questionable stains returned to isolation. Short, clean pieces became spacer blocks only when the design called for them. Nothing received an important job merely because the deadline was close. On the 10th day, 60 completed carriers stood in the same shipping bays the original crates had blocked 4 months earlier. The first wave held 24 tables, 48 chairs packed in properly separated pairs, and 6 reception pieces. Each carrier had accessible inspection points. Each restraint position matched one drawing. Each lower runner could be removed without destroying the frame. Grant walked between the rows. He had expected Miriam to bring back old boxes. Instead, She had brought Westfield a method for knowing which old parts could return and which ones could not. The first trucks left for Maryland under a cold spring rain. Grant followed the first delivery. At the hotel dock, workers opened the trailer and inspected every carrier before unloading. The first tables were clean. The chair frames were square. No strap had loosened. Near the rear door, one table carrier showed a deep crushed mark across an outer pine panel. Another load had shifted against it during the trip. Carl, who had traveled with Grant, placed his hand on the damage. That one is finished. Miriam had prepared for that exact kind of damage. The crushed panel was not the frame. It was a replaceable shield. Workers removed 6 screws, slid the damaged board from its rail, and examined the corner blocks behind it. The frame remained square. The table inside had no mark. A replacement panel went in before the carrier returned to Pennsylvania. That was the final proof. The carrier did not succeed because nothing could hurt it. It succeeded because ordinary damage reached the part designed to be replaced first. The empty carriers returned to Westfield, passed through inspection, and carried the second wave. Then they returned again for the third. Over 4 weeks, the same 60 units helped move all 72 tables, 144 chairs, and 18 reception pieces. Larger furniture used 1 carrier. Selected chair carriers held 2 chairs with separate padded restraints. The rotation worked because the hotels unloaded promptly, and Westfield inspected every unit before reuse. 2 outer panels and 3 lower runners were replaced during the complete order. No carrier corner collapsed. No finished surface was damaged by movement inside the frame, and Westfield met the final hotel deadline. At the end of May, Westfield paid Miriam $42,600 for design work, prepared components, completed carriers, supervision, and records. New structural lumber, cushioning, and factory labor were accounted for separately. The number did not mean 600 discarded crates had secretly been worth $42,000. Many boards had been rejected. Hundreds of hours had gone into inspection, conditioning, testing, design, and assembly. New material had been used where repeatable structure demanded it. The payment meant Westfield was no longer buying empty space. It was buying tested work. Carl visited Miriam after the final carrier returned. The split runner from the first bench still hung above her table. "I said we would never want those crates back," he said. Miriam opened the ledger to crate number 48. The next pages showed rejected stains, hidden steel, conditioning dates, movement gaps, corner blocks, test results, and shipping assignments. "You did not get the crates back," she said. "You received what we learned after taking them apart." Westfield changed its packaging process that summer. Workers stopped crushing every incoming crate into one pile. Known damage and contamination were recorded. Reusable carriers were returned when possible. Sound components were separated before they became mixed waste. The factory did not send every future box to Miriam. That would only create another pile. Recovery happened when the material, labor, and new use honestly matched. Above Miriam's bench remained 3 objects: her father's old box hammer, the split runner from the failed bench, and 1 corner block from the first hotel carrier. Old knowledge had shown her where to look. Failure had shown her what she missed. Testing had shown the factory what the wood could safely do. If you want more stories about ordinary materials surviving extraordinary tests, subscribe and join us for the next one. Because the value of an old box is not proved when someone refuses to throw it away. It is proved when every weak corner is found before the weight returns.
Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel and join us for the next one. See you soon.